All right, you guys, we're going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker of the day. Up next, we've got J. Michael. He's been a documentary filmmaker, director for a number of years. He worked with our mutual buddy, the late Jim Mars, on some interesting projects as well. He has an interesting experience of his own and actually helped to share about some of the things that took place back in 1973. And this is a case that many people have heard of, and he got to share about that in his documentary Alien Contact with Calvin Parker, who we were fortunate to be able to know for a number of years before he passed away not too long ago. And he describes a lot of interesting things that happened to him back in Pascagoula, Mississippi. And that's something that you guys can check out in his documentary. He's done a number of different films, not just on the alien and UFO phenomenon, but also other mysterious and paranormal topics, as well as Bigfoot. It's really cool to see the variety of things that he's been able to cover. And he also has a new show. I was fortunate to be able to guest on one of the episodes a while back, and it's something that you guys can check out, the J. Michael Show as well. So that's something that, if you guys are interested in listening to, he's got some pretty cool episodes on there with different guests. He's going to be sharing some interesting insights about experiences, his own personal experience, along with some of the government revelations and things that have been coming forward as far as that goes from the official standpoint when it comes to all this. A lot of information has been coming out this year and the last few years about disclosure and the idea that if government insiders know anything, if they can come forward and blow the whistle on some of this information about programs, crash retrievals, non-human intelligence, and there's a lot of really interesting news going on with what's happening with Congress. So if you guys aren't keeping up with it, this is a great place to be able to connect with people who are familiar with some of the things or are interested in trying to find out what's happening, and to pay attention to the news right now, because this is a big hot topic, and I think people are curious, not just those who are interested in this subject, but people who are otherwise indifferent or don't really know. This is kind of an interesting time frame for us to be able to have an event like this to share about stuff that otherwise people don't really know much about, and so it's something kind of that's been relegated to science fiction or just the fringe. But it's really important to keep in mind that the more that this topic gets into public awareness through mainstream media, that it'll open up the discussion and help to destigmatize the ideas that have been discussed for decades, that many people not only feel like they've had a personal experience or encounter with, but can feel a little bit alleviated that they can go and talk to different people, because it's hard to come forward and to discuss different things, experiences, when most of the rest of the world, even friends and family, don't seem to really understand a lot of the time. So it's cool to be able to see all of you here that are open-minded enough. So I'm glad that we can continue to do these types of events and have our next speaker be able to come and share about his own. It takes a lot. It's very courageous to be able to open up and describe some things which are difficult to discuss. So I'm very glad to be able to welcome up our next guest and my good friend J. Michael up to the stage. Let's give a hand to Jay.
Thank you, Daniel. Wow, I'm going to try this standing up thing. I may have to pull a chair up here at some point because I have neuropathy in my legs, and standing is not easy for me. So just to let you know, I am J. Michael Long. And I'm a documentary film producer. I produce hundreds of different titles on UFOs, aliens, ancient aliens, Bigfoot, things like that. I have a panel thing back there where you can buy a DVD if you want to. But my interest in all of this began in 1973. October 11th was the night. It was Thursday. And I was 12 years old, and I witnessed this huge orange ball of light float across our property in Ellisville, Mississippi, which is about 90 miles from the coast. And it was right after dusk. And it was just startling for me to see this thing, how big it was. My mom drove a Galaxy 500 Ford. You could put that Ford in that thing twice. That's how big it was when it floated over. And it was headed from the north to the south, headed straight for the coast, which we were about 90 miles from the coast. And I didn't know anything about the Pascagoula situation or that story until that weekend, when all the parents and all the adults around me were talking about those two crazy dudes down there on the coast that claimed that they were picked up by aliens. And I'm like, what? Aliens? I didn't know anything about UFOs. I didn't know anything about alien abductions. I'm 12 years old. I didn't know anything about any of that stuff. And I thought it was fascinating because I had seen something that same night. Later on in life, I did a documentary on it. It's called Alien Encounters Pascagoula Incident. It's back there, you can get it. We even showed it in one of the towns I did a talk for, a couple of years ago. But be that as it may, the weird thing about with my encounter that night also, and everything after that, is that for roughly every 2 years, I've had what I consider a quality sighting. I don't know why it seems to happen every 2 years, but and I'll tell you in just a moment one that happened in '75, which was 2 years after this initial incident in '73. But for whatever reason, I see them every 2 years, or I see something that I can't explain. So I'm going to go into a little about some of the things that I have seen. I don't want to get too deep into that. But in 1975, up the road from where I live, a buddy of mine had just bought a pellet gun, and we went out to sit under his carport and play with the gun and talk. And as I'm talking to him, I turned to say something to him, and up in the sky is this silver ball. It was about the size of a 50-cent piece in the sky, held at arm's length. And I saw it, and I was like, Kevin, dig this. He turns around and looks at it, and we're watching it. The clouds are moving across. So it's moving against the wind, and it slowly gets right above both of us at the edge of his carport. And we're looking up at it, and at this point, it's a little bit bigger. It's a little bigger than, say, a ping pong ball or something up in the sky above us. Kevin instinctually begins to pump up that pellet gun. He's getting ready. And we're sitting here looking at this, and he reaches up, and about 3 seconds later, we heard, ding, like it hit something. And you'd think we'd be scared, but we were like, wow, we hit it. And at that point, it had been a couple of years after '73, so I was really beginning to get interested in UFOs. And I remember I had a magazine. In that magazine, it had a sheet of paper that talked about what you're supposed to do if you see something. And one thing on that was always make sure you record the time. And so Kevin, I said, what time is it? Neither of us had a watch. And so we're trying to figure out what time it is. He yells at his sister, bring a clock. And this thing is still sitting there. It's beginning to drift upwards now and would eventually be obscured by the clouds. But she comes walking outside with this huge wall clock. She took off the living room wall and brought it out to us. And it was 3:15. And I just thought it was hilarious that she brought the entire wall clock. She walks up to the edge of the carport, has rolled this clock up, and she's sitting here like this. And she goes, like, what are you doing? Nope. And turns around and goes back inside. She didn't want to have anything to do with that. But that's kind of just a funny story because I thought it was hilarious, and I remember it from all of that. When I used to work in radio. I was a DJ for 20 years. I worked at WKNZ, and one morning I was going through the back roads to get to the radio station, and I rounded a corner, and I knew I could speed on these back roads because the odds of there being a cop was, almost nil. And as I got on this one turn that was headed towards the back of the radio station, there's a house on the left side, and in front of the house is big blue light in front of a barn next to the house. And my first response was, oh, cop, I need to slow down. So I'm slowing down, and I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, this is odd. And I'm rolling the window down, and as I'm rolling the window down to get a good look at it, this blue light in front of the barn shoots straight up in the air. And I'm hanging out of my truck, looking at it, wondering what the heck was that. So that's another thing that has happened. Once I was in Pensacola at a UFO conference. I'm just going to turn it over. Sorry, I'm getting dry mouth. Anyway, I was at a UFO conference. Stan Friedman was there. Stan and I had met each other and we were talking, and we'd gotten into some conversations about UFOs, and we walked out back onto the beach. This was at a hotel on the beach in Pensacola. And we're both standing there, and I had binoculars and he didn't. And we're talking about UFOs, and suddenly over the ocean, this red light shoots up in the air and stops. And both of us are kind of like, okay, what is that? Well, I looked at it through binoculars and realized that it was one bright light and about 1 o'clock position, a smaller red light, a smaller light. Both of them were red. And we're staring at this and we're looking at it and all. And after a few minutes, it flared several times and then just seemed to fade out. Both he and I agreed that it's a light in the sky at night, could be anything. And it was also towards Elgin Air Force Base, so it could have been something they were doing. But I found it interesting that that happened while he was standing right next to me. And so that's another interesting story that it happened along this 2-year thing. I was driving on Highway 49 heading south past Hattiesburg, Mississippi, going to the coast, and there's some hills that kind of roll on 49. And as I topped one of the hills, my wife in the car next to me, my second wife, was asleep, so she didn't see anything. This golden saucer drops out of the clouds, just drops like this. And it's like it caught and took off. And I thought, man, that was really weird. And obviously metallic, obviously large, even though it was at something of a distance. So that's another one. I worked after radio and before becoming a documentary film producer, I worked for a while at Kinko's. And I'd walked out front one day, out of smoke, and I'm looking at the sky, and here comes a line of little saucers. I would say they were probably about maybe 15, 20 feet in diameter, and they were further away. And they were coming in a straight line. This guy walks out of this Kinko's. He's a businessman, he's in a suit. And I said, hey, look at this. And he stops and he's looking at it too. And we watched this line of about 7 saucers coming kind of towards Kinko's. And then as they reached a certain point, the first one went straight up. And the next ones would advance, and then the next one went straight up. And they continued to do this action where they would until the last one went straight up in the air. This would have been in the late 90s. And we didn't have drones. Drones could do that easily now. But back then there were no drones, certainly not little consumer drones or whatever, and not that large. But I thought it was very unusual the way they acted, the way they did that maneuver. And I turned to the guy and I'm like, did you see that? And his reaction was, and he turned around and walked off. And it always made me wonder, do people see the same thing I see? Why didn't this impress him? Why wasn't he like, oh my God, there's nothing that we have conventional that can fly that can do that? Except helicopters maybe, and they certainly weren't helicopters. And it was perfectly quiet. Broad daylight, middle of the day during the week, plenty of people in this mall shopping center area where the Kinko's was. Nobody cared. I've always wondered about that. Do people see different things? Did he see balloons? Did he interpret it differently? Or did he simply not know how to deal with it? And he just said, and walked off. How people see things and how they react to them can be very, very different. The last thing that I saw was last November. And there are several in between this, but I'm just picking out certain ones. I walked out back, sitting in my backyard, and as I usually do, I'm staring up at the night sky. And this V-shaped craft comes over my house. And it's pretty far up in the sky, and it is not bright at all. It's very, very dim. But you can see from what I call skylight, just light off the ground up to the sky. I could tell what shape it was. And the little lights that were inside the bead were very, very dim. So if you weren't just looking at it, you probably wouldn't have noticed it at all. But this thing comes across, it's moving around, and then it suddenly does this arc turn very quickly, speeding up in the arc. And it went off through the trees, and I couldn't see it anymore. Another one of those sightings that this is definitely not conventional. No sound, no propellers, no jet engines, nothing like that. And yet, there it is in the sky. Obviously something big, but at altitude. And it makes this movement. So, and these are some of the things that I've experienced. I've had ghost experiences. I know you're gonna laugh at this one. I've seen Bigfoot. It was in Louisiana. And for years I wouldn't even talk about it because you think Bigfoot, you think Bigfoot, you know. What I saw was very low to the ground, ran very quickly on all fours, had no tail, had no snout, round head. And the way that it ran, the way it did this push-pull motion as it ran, the way its hand, paws, and feet bent to the point where, the top of your foot cannot touch your shin. The top of my hand cannot touch my arm because it won't bend back that far. This creature's could, because the way it ran and the way it pushed and pulled and ran across the ground, you could see that it was keeping his feet flat on the ground, his hands flat on the ground, and it could bend his hand back that way. Weird looking thing to see run across a cut through in the middle of the woods and late at night in Louisiana, but there it was. So I've seen strange things, had strange experiences, and now that I'm a documentary film producer, I write scripts and I make productions and movies and things like that about these subjects. As I was making notes for my talk today, I started writing them down. And it's normal for me to write like a script instead of just bullet points or something to talk about. So as I began to put it together, I thought, I might end up having to read some of this to them rather than talk off the top of my head because I don't always get my statistics right. I want to make sure everything's accurate. So as I give my presentation today, I will be reading some of it because I want to make sure that you get the gist of the ideas of what I want to present to you. It's called Rise of the UAP. We're going to talk about some of the things that's happened in the last 10 years or so. Using publicly National UFO Reporting Center data, found a consistent correlation between areas of military operations and public reports of UAP sightings. Since it was formed, let's see if we can get this where I can actually turn the page. Since it was formed last summer, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office has received 366 reports of unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs, essentially the military's term for a UFO now. That total reflects 247 new UAP reports and another 119 that occurred before March 2021, but hadn't been included in the earlier preliminary report. That is a lot of reports for something that has popped up recently, and they suddenly begin to share this data. UFO phenomena has been around a long time, but now they're paying attention to it. The new numbers indicate a steep rise in UAP sightings. The preliminary report released in June of 2021 listed just 144 reports, covering a 17-year period. With the subsequent additions, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, has 510 UFO reports in the files at the end of August 22. Now, officials say they believe the rise in UAP reports is due to the U.S. government's efforts to destigmatize the topic of UAP and instead recognize the potential risks. We're going to get back to that word in a moment. The phenomenon poses both as aviation hazard and potential adversarial activity, such as foreign surveillance efforts. The AARO doesn't only study objects in the air. The military's definition of a UAP was recently expanded to include objects in the air, sea, as well as transmedium objects. Transmedium meaning it can go from space, fly in the air, drop down into the water, navigate through the water, come back out of the water, travel through the air, go back in outer space. We have nothing that can do that. None of our technology even comes close to being able to replicate that transmedium ability. It'd be nice if we did. I'm sure the military would love to have a craft that can do that, but we don't have that. The AARO defines the last category as objects or devices that are observed in transition between space, the atmosphere, between the atmosphere and bodies of water that are not immediately identifiable. USOs are included. In recent years, one of the most compelling accounts of a UAP encounter came from a retired U.S. Navy fighter pilot, Alex Dietrich, who has described seeing a highly unusual object off the coast of Southern California in 2004 after a colleague spotted something rolling water below them. They're in their aircraft. They're flying along. They look down and they see what looks like boiling water under them on the surface. And this is very odd for them as pilots. The object was roundish with an oblong shape. It didn't have any apparent flight control surfaces. No wings, no propellers, no jet engines, nothing that can make it fly. The pilot said it seemed to be bouncing around and changing course very quickly and in a way that would not have been able to maneuver our own aircraft or keep up with it. In 2008, Bob McWhirter, one of the staff aboard the USS Blue Ridge, experienced a military UFO sighting. This was a huge craft. The U.S. Navy aircraft carrier was in the midst of a huge typhoon. It's like a hurricane. And Bob claims to have seen a mysterious craft so big that it stopped the rain from falling on the ship from stem to stern. In his experience, he claims that when he was on the bridge of the ship, there was no rain hitting the ship, despite them being in the middle of a typhoon. Whenever he looked out of the window, he said he glanced up and saw a glow above, up in the sky. And when he went to get a closer look, he noticed that the lights were yellowish and appeared to be on a flat surface. So this is like stepping out of your ship and seeing an umbrella with a flat surface and lights on it hovering over your ship. The eerie part about the military UFO sighting is that when Bob continued watching the ominous light, the object suddenly grew bigger before taking off, shooting straight up into the cloudy sky. And once the mysterious object did that, the rain returned. On March 5th, 2005, Mexican Air Force pilots filmed 11 unidentified objects flying in the skies of the southern Campeche state. The Iranian military has encountered their own UFOs as well. In November 2004, an Iranian F-14 Tomcat tried to lock on to a luminous object that was appearing on their radar, only for the navigation equipment of his aircraft to be totally disrupted. That sounds like my phone. And the pilot of the aircraft described the object as spherical and something with a green afterburner, creating a considerable amount of turbulence behind it. And just like every military UFO sighting report, the unidentified object increases its speed and quickly runs away. In the past 10 years, military radar has advanced, and now we can detect smaller and slower moving objects. In the past, it had to be about an airplane size or something like that for the radar to be able to detect it. And the reason for that is they had filters that would filter out anything smaller so they didn't misidentify flocks of birds and things like that. We have more sophisticated radar now. These enhancements allow the military a new capability to detect UAPs and UFOs that otherwise would have been filtered out. They do see flocks of birds and balloons, but these objects have predictable flight paths and can easily be determined to be non-threatening. Objects that appear to speed up, slow down, make right-angle turns, and even shoot off into space are now within the military's ability to track more efficiently. And since these new radar systems and filters have been implemented in all military radar, there's been an increase in UFO and UAP encounters, enough to warrant a new look at all craft moving through our skies with impunity. Multiple objects that defy conventional avionics are recorded and documented almost daily, with some being reported to Congress, the Pentagon, and eventually to the media. Revelations about UFOs and UAPs began a few years ago when leaks of data about a 2004 encounter happened. 3 UFO video surfaced, which were confirmed by the government, and most of you have probably seen those on the news or on television. They were confirmed by the government that they were real. They were actual footage taken by the military. The revolution of a secret UAP study group emerged too, ATIP, or the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. This was mind-blowing for people a few years ago when it came out, because for years and years and years, the government had constantly said, we don't have any studies of UFOs, not since Project Blue Book have we done anything, we don't care about UFOs. Oh, by the way, here's a $22 million program that's been running out of the Pentagon for quite a while, and we are in fact interested in UAPs. And the program was unclassified but unpublicized investigatory effort funded by the United States government to study unidentified flying objects or explain aerial phenomena. The program was made public on December the 16th, 2017. The program began in 2007 with funding of $22 million, over 5 years until the available appropriations were ended in 2012, or so they say. The program began in the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, Pentagon. Now, according to the Department of Defense, ATIP ended in 2012 after 5 years. However, further reporting suggested that U.S. government programs to investigate UFOs did continue. And this was confirmed in June of 2020 with the acknowledgement of a similar military program, the unclassified but previously unreported unidentified aerial phenomenon task force. Now, I'm emphasizing certain words here because I'm going to get to this. Something I think is very important. Soon after this huge revelation, there was the disclosure of yet the other program, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO. This is an office within the United States Office of the Secretary of Defense that investigates unidentified flying objects, UFOs, and other phenomena in the air, sea, and or space, and or on land, and continues to refer to it as unidentified aerial phenomena or unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAP. Its director is physicist Sean Kirkpatrick. We used to have programs called Project Sign, Project Blue Book. Now we're naming them Task Force or Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon. And we're using a lot more aggressive terminology now, the government is, when they talk about these things. We don't have a project to study them, we have a task force. And that sounds a lot more ominous, and there may be a reason for that. ARO was preceded by the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force, a 2020 to 2021 program within the Office of Naval Intelligence used to standardize collection and reporting of sightings of UFOs. UAPTF, government loves those acronyms, was detailed in a June 2020 hearing of the United States Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. The UAPTF issued a preliminary report on June 2021 and July 2022. It was announced that the UAPTF would be succeeded by the organization of the AARO. Now, on April 12, 2021, the Pentagon confirmed the authenticity of pictures and videos gathered by the task force, purportedly showing what appears to be pyramid-shaped objects hovering above the USS Russell in 2019 off the coast of California, with spokeswoman Susan Gao saying, "I can confirm that the referenced photos and videos were taken by Navy personnel. The UAPTF has included these incidents in their ongoing examinations." Government getting serious now. You know, they're looking at this thing now and they're going like, wait a minute, it's kind of scary. These things are up there in the air and we don't know where they come from, what they are, what their inventions are, and they're flying around in our military theaters. And this is scary for them. And they're getting more and more aggressive at looking into this. The following month, Gao further confirmed a second video that had been recorded by Navy personnel and was under review by the task force. The video, recorded on July 15, 2019, in the Combat Information Center of the USS Omaha, purportedly shows a spherical object flying over the ocean as seen through an infrared IR camera, which was probably on a drone, at night, moving across the screen before stopping and easing down into the water. We don't have anything that can do that. We don't have craft that can go from the air into the water, back out of the water again. So from a military point of view, this is terrifying. This is scary. I mean, these things can outrun us, outgun us, hide from us in the ocean, take off somewhere else out of the ocean, and there's nothing we can do about it. From a military point of view, that's terrifying. June 25th, 2021, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence releases a report on UAPs, commonly known as the Pentagon UFO report. The report found that the UAPTF was unable to identify 143 of 144 objects spotted between 2004 and 2021. They identified one thing. Out of all of those, they could only identify one. They didn't know what the others were. The report said that 18 featured unusual movement patterns or flight characteristics, and more analysis was needed to determine if those sightings represented breakthrough technology. In other words, something that's not conventional. Doesn't require wings, doesn't require propellers, doesn't require jet engines. or impellers to move it along. The report noted that some of these steps were resource intensive and required additional investment. We don't know what this is, so we're going to spend way more money and we're going to keep looking at what it is because we need to know what this is. The report did not link the sightings to extraterrestrial life, with officials saying we have no clear indications that there is any non-terrestrial explanation for them, but we will go wherever the data takes us. It ain't ours. It isn't China. It isn't Russia. It isn't Iran. It isn't North Korea. It isn't any technological nation on this planet that has a capability of making any of these craft. If we didn't make them, somebody else did. Somebody's manufacturing them. Somebody is flying them. And that somebody, logically, ain't us. We didn't make it. So if we didn't make it, somebody else did make it. It's not a leap of logic to assume that it ain't ours, gotta be somebody's, gotta be theirs. Now, in 2023, United States Air Force officer and former intelligence official David Grush was interviewed by various media outlets and testified in a U.S. House of Representatives congressional hearing. Grush claimed that he had conversations with unnamed officials that led him to believe that the U.S. federal government maintains a secretive UFO or UAP recovery program and is in possession of non-human spacecraft along with their dead pilots. Quote, 2022, Grush filed a whistleblower complaint with the U.S. Office of the Intelligence Community Inspector General to support his plan to share classified information with the U.S. Senate and Select Committee on Intelligence. He also filed a complaint alleging retaliation by his superiors over a similar complaint he had made in 2001. He knew about these files. He wrote the book on how whistleblowers come forward. Literally, that was his job. He designed and wrote all of the information that you need to have, all the forms you need to fill out, everything you need to do to be a whistleblower on anything having to do with the Pentagon. That was his job. So he knew exactly what he was doing. He knew how to cross his T's. He knew how to dot his I's. And he knew how to know that he was not making any legal or illegal mistake in his release of this information. He claims to have viewed documents reporting that Mussolini's government recovered a non-human spacecraft in 1933. Now, we just heard Mitch talk about one in 1941. All of this predates Roswell, which the Vatican and the Five Eyes assisted the U.S. in procuring in 1944 and 45. We bought it from them. We paid American money to the Mussolini's government to get this craft and bring it to the United States. Well before Roswell. Grush claimed secondhand knowledge that American citizens have been harmed and killed as part of the government's efforts to cover up the information. In response, in his June 2023 claims, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, and the U.S. Department of Defense, DoD, issued statements reaffirming that no evidence of extraterrestrial life has ever been discovered and that there is no verifiable information about anyone possessing and reversing engineering any extraterrestrial spacecraft. Now, they used a term called non-human biologics. Everybody that heard that heard space aliens. They're non-human. They're not human, right? As a program flight programs, we have often used test animals to test out a completely new and exotic type of aircraft. In the 1950s, Russia sent a dog up, we sent up monkeys. We use test animals all the time. It's possible that the government used this particular euphemism, non-human biologics, because if they ever want to walk this story back, all they got to do is say, oh, no, we never said aliens. We said non-human biologics, like a canary in a coal mine. It's just, we had a creature, we had an animal on this test craft of ours, and they can claim they built it themselves. The whole canary in the coal mine thing. So I think this is a way that the government intentionally inserted a term that they can always walk back if they need to. But it probably meant extraterrestrial. From 2019 to 2021, who is this David Grush guy? He was a decorated combat veteran and former Air Force intelligence officer who worked at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and the National Reconnaissance Office. From 2019 to 2021, he was the representative of the NRO to the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force. From late 21 to 22, he was the co-lead for UAP analysis of the NGA and the representative to the task force. He assisted in drafting the National Defense Authorization Act of 2023, which includes provisions for reporting of UFOs, including whistleblower protections and exemptions to non-disclosure orders and agreements. He's in the right place at the right time with the right people to know the answers to these questions about UAPs and UFOs. His credentials appear to be impeccable. Think about that for a moment. The highest ranking people that have come forward so far, he's one of them. He's an intelligence agent. He wrote the book on how to report, file reports, create reports, do anything with reports on UFOs and UAPs. And he's coming out and saying, we have crashed UFOs. We have non-human biological entities. However, at his own admittance, he has not seen any alien craft, UAPs or aliens. He claims to have seen documents of the existence of such materials and was told by high-ranking officials they do exist and the retrieval program is real. You're in this position, you work at the Pentagon, and your upper echelon guys are telling you this. Do you just not believe them? No, I mean, that's their job. That's what they do. You know what your job is. You know what you do. You all are in an intelligence community. Truth is essential to your job. You need to be able to talk to each other. And no one above him is questioning this. In fact, they're sitting there and going, oh yeah, we have crashed UFOs. Oh yeah, we have aliens. Oh, by the way, here's some documents on it. You can read about it. Can't show it to you, sorry, but you can read about it. And we'll tell you right now, oh yeah, it's all true. Do you not believe your bosses? Of course you do. That's their job. Grush and Kirkpatrick disagreed, as Kirkpatrick didn't have any info Grush revealed at this, and suggests that the two departments, the ARO and his department, don't talk to each other. Or the AARO is another program like Project Blue Book, used to whitewash reports for the public, which may very well be true, because if they're not telling this new AARO with its scientists and panels of scientists to study this stuff, if they're not telling them about this, then they actually either have their own people to look into it, or They don't want to know. The term non-human biologics is vague, could be interpreted as test animals used on board an experimental spacecraft. It would not be the first time test animals were used while developing a new and exotic spaceship. When we began our exploration of space, the Russians sent up a dog in space. We sent up trained monkeys and animals. These are necessary to test the conditions of a spacecraft in a space environment. See how biological people or something would react in it. If you got some kind of weird magnetic field going on inside your spacecraft while you're in space, you want to know, is it going to kill our astronauts or not? So they send up test animals. However, most have now accepted that non-human biologics was a euphemism for alien life. One must be diligent when the government speaks about any subject, especially a sensitive subject like UFOs. If an agency of the government is using test animals, then they would want to keep it a secret. Why? They could face the wrath of organizations like PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. You're talking about a lawsuit waiting to happen. If it came out that we have some kind of exotic spacecraft and we're using test animals on it, PETA would go crazy. They would file lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. They could mire your entire government program down into nothing but having to deal with lawyers all the time, and they don't want that. So they maintain a level of ambiguity. In either case, this term, non-human biologics, gives the government military a way out, a way to explain later that they didn't say alien, but only referred to something non-human, such as an animal. If the government wants to backstep the whistleblower claims, they have a way to roll it back. And this is par for the course when dealing with government transparency. It's often clear as mud. Now, many now agree a true disclosure will not come from the government, and perhaps will only come from the aliens themselves. The truth is, the military and government may have more data of the existence of UAPs and UFOs and aliens, but they may not actually know themselves what UAPs are. It is in their best interest, though, that you think that they do. Therefore, you will look at them for answers. After all, the government is all-knowing, all-seeing, and the pinnacle of truth and knowledge, right? Right. In this modern era of ufology, we have seen and recorded multiple UAP and UFOs on film, radar, digital media, and night vision. Since the phenomenon is mostly seen in the skies, we believe what we're seeing is an advanced craft from a civilization from another planet. The term alien has come to be understood to be meaning a being from another solar system. All of our terminology for this phenomenon has been describing what we believe is advanced technology. However, in times past, this was not the case. Sightings of something unusual in the skies were often seen as gods, fairies, signs and portents, or a spiritual phenomenon. We advanced technologically. Therefore, the phenomenon advanced with us. We developed the ability to fly with airships and airplanes. After that, UFOs were airships and aircraft. We developed rockets and traveled to the moon. UFOs became spacecraft. The point is that we see any phenomenon through the lens of where we are at in our evolution. Flying chariots of the gods became alien spacecraft because we now are technologically advanced enough to build our own chariots. As humans, we assume. But what if our assumptions are wrong? We approach this subject as a technological question, that UAPs are ships and spacecraft. What if they're not? Now, the question we have always faced is, what are these things? Perhaps our ancestors were correct in their assumption that these things that we see in the sky are spiritual phenomena rather than machines. Science says you can't get there from here and you can't get from here to there because the distance is too great. So we subscribe the advanced propulsion systems to the alleged aliens and make them far more advanced than ourselves. The aliens can come here through their technology, which is better, and they have found a way to make traveling over distance very easy. We explore the use of wormholes and other new and modern scientific ideas to explain how they're able to visit us. Is this true? Or is it simply that we can't fathom the notion that we're not able to explain everything, and even if the explanation is only a theory? And because they are technologically more advanced than we look to them to be more spiritually advanced. Therefore, they become angels, light beings, filled with wisdom and knowledge that can benefit us. They're here to save us or guide us. This may or may not be true. Technological knowledge and abilities do not necessarily mean that they're wiser, just more creative. We are more technologically advanced than humans from the late 1800s. But are we any wiser or spiritually advanced? When you look at today's news, you're going to answer that no. We're nowhere near better off. Within the UFO community, there's a growing movement toward alternative explanations of UAPs and UFOs. The idea is that these are not physical, but rather paranormal or supernatural. Aliens are not necessarily from another planet, but rather from another realm of reality. UAPs are a physical manifestation from this realm or a supernatural vessel or beings themselves. The UAP-UFO mystery may not be something that we can understand, at least not from a scientific perspective. Let's sink in for a moment. Perhaps UFOs and UAPs are not a scientific question, but rather a paranormal question. The subject may better be left to parapsychologists rather than scientists. It may not be possible to explain them with a scientific method, or where our science is right now. Our scientific thinking makes us believe they cannot reach Earth because of distance. They may simply pass through a portal or appear anywhere within the universe at will. The truth is, we have no idea what they are, where they come from, and their purpose here, and we shouldn't pretend that we do know, because we don't. Perhaps they're here to observe, but not interfere. UAPs have demonstrated that they can shut down our nuclear missiles, but they've never detonated one or tried to remove them. It appears to be more curiosity than any other agenda. Though it would be a major hit to our ego, but their agenda may have nothing to do with us. Their reasons for coming to our realm, flying around Earth and observing the planet, could be for their own benefit. And we're merely one of a multitude of species here, no more or less interesting than any other species. You see, we as humans, we tend to think we're all that. If you're going to come here from another planet and study our planet, well, we must be the number one reason why you're here, right? Because we have egos and we think we're it. Not necessarily. They don't think like we do. Or maybe they don't. They may be interested in us specifically, though. In the past 100 years, we have gone from horse-drawn carriages to jet planes, using an abacus to computers and cell phones and social media, anyone can broadcast their own message to the world from a pocket device. We've done that quickly. That may make us very interesting. Humans have evolved in extraordinary ways just in the past 50 years. Perhaps we are fascinating to them because we use technology in different ways. They may want to learn from us new and different ways to use their technology. They may be hoping we evolve to a point where we can understand them. Now, there could be a multitude of reasons why UAPs and UFOs are here, and all are speculation. We have theories, ideas, concepts to try to explain the alien agenda, but we have no proof. Till now, we have used the scientific method to understand them with little to no results. The fact is, we're no closer to explaining the phenomenon today than we were in the 1950s, when the modern study of UFOs began. It may be time that we take a different approach. We've always believed UFOs are crafts occupied by aliens. They were little green men that later became gray. They're from another planet and are exploring space the same way we are with spacecraft and probes. We subscribe our own methods to them and expect the mystery to fit into a methodology that we can grasp. We assume they have some agenda or reasons to visit the Earth, just as we would exploring our moon or any planets in our solar system. We have a reason for going there. They are here to take samples and study our world. They take us and study our genetics. They approach our nuclear storage facilities and bases, buzz our spacecraft, travel underwater with ease. These are all expected concepts that fit within our abilities that we would do if we had the same technology to explore great distances. We're looking into this mystery through our own human lens. Now, if we use the scientific method, then they probably do too. So their actions would be quantified. However, if their science is far more advanced than ours, then our methods may appear random in their methodology, or theirs to us. The problem is we're trying to fit them into a way of thinking that isn't working. Sorry, I get dry mouth. If the UFO enigma is a paranormal subject and not a physical one, then our approach to it should change and adapt to a more spiritual method, rather than trying to make it fit our scientific agendas, and should explore it from a supernatural point of view. It could be that they appear to us as physical craft when alien occupants, because it's what we would expect. Perhaps they are trying to approach us in such a way that we would understand it. A spacecraft lands, aliens emerge, they conduct genetic experiments on us and then leave. A scenario we can accept because it's the same thing we would do if we went to another planet. In order to explore the human race, they appear to be aliens and do things in such a way that we can conceptualize. Perhaps they're trying to make it make sense to us. What they are really doing may be far beyond our ability to understand. If UAPs and UFOs come to us via portals and other dimensions rather than other planets, their methods would be so foreign to us, we simply cannot comprehend it. So they create a phenomenon for us that we can approach and try to relate to. Truth is, It may be a very long time before we have advanced enough to even begin to understand them. In the meantime, we deal with a mystery and a phenomenon that appears to be inexplicable. It'd be very easy for us to simply write them off in a religious way and say that they're demons or they're guardians here to guide us and direct us towards spiritual unfoldment. Perhaps they are. However, this is not truly understanding the phenomenon, but rather us reaching a conclusion that may or may not be true. If we simply accept that as a catch-all answer to the mystery, we're no closer to actually knowing what is really going on than when we were when we started in antiquity. Nor should we ignore the problem. They are here, apparently trying to interact with us on some level, so we should listen and try to comprehend the best we can. If proof is what we need, then our priority must be to prove they are something beyond our scope and intelligence level. Government, scientific community, and academics had to accept that there is something to this problem, and they are tasked with finding the answers. Naturally, they approach the conundrum from a terrestrial point of view. Some foreign nation must have invented some new craft and propulsion system, and they are using it to spy on us. They ignore the vast amount of sightings that predate the modern age and the rise of technology. To them, there must be some mundane explanation, and they will not even consider the mystery is or is not alien in nature. I think timekeeper. So, the UFO UAP, say that 5 times fast, especially when you have dry mouth. The UFO UAP mystery has been with us since we were able to scribe pictographs on stone cave walls. In all that time, with the exception of a few incidents, the UAPs have never seemed to cause harm or kill us. There's never been an alien invasion, a UFO encounter that turned deadly or created mass destruction. For the most part, UAPs and UFOs appear to be benign. We see them, we are marveled at them, and they have no real ill effect on us. We can change the name of the phenomenon, attempt to seek answers in different ways, but ultimately we're exploring ourselves, that which makes us human and the greatness we have within us. As we expand our consciousness to accept something greater than ourselves, we step closer to true understanding of the cosmos, and we occupy realms beyond ourselves and our own capabilities. The rise of the UAP is in reality the rise of mankind. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Do you think that some people have a certain frequency or an attunement that gives them the ability to go somewhere and it's like, oh, there they are. They keep running into UFOs and UAPs. It seems to me like there are certain people that have this, like the way the mediums do. It's like there's people that have some kind of attunement to the UAP frequency or something.
Mm-hmm. I know what you're talking about, and I do agree. And yes, I think that there are certain people that they're attracted to. It's like a magnetic thing, they're attracted to it. What that is or why it exists, I have no idea. But I do agree that there definitely is some reason why some people see them more than others.
Well, do you think, has a study ever been done as far as the differences between men and women? Like who of the two groups has more encounters than?
That's a good question. As far as male, female, I don't know. I don't know of any kind of study like that. But that would be a good study to see if there are more. I would assume there'd be more women than men, but I don't know that, you know. What is that barking? Oh, it's a dog. Okay.
Another question over here.
Retired military here and DoD contractor. Difference between project and task force is, guess what?
Right.
Budgetary.
Oh, really?
It all comes down to budgets and who you can hire. Projects are more often something where you're going to get an outside contractor, and on the other side, task force are quite often more in the area of bringing academia in. So I can,
Okay, so what you're telling me is that Project Blue Book was just a book, a study, and a task force is to go and do something.
It just depends on where it's phrased, but it's also budgetary. And when they say Blue Book, forget the blue, forget the book.
Yeah.
That is just a title that comes out of, here's a list of project names.
Right.
But projects, you can get outside contractors into a project. And quite often, I've also worked with task forces before, and that's more directed at academia and maybe business leaders, thought processes and things like that.
Yeah. I found that the use of terms to me was interesting, because we went from them using more benign terms, a project, we're looking into this, we're doing that, to now it's a task force, and they could have just said, oh, well, we have Project UAP. We're looking into the UAP phenomenon. And again, it may have something to do with how much budget they have, but you could spend $22 million looking into a phenomenon, or you could spend $22 million maybe trying to do something about it. And so I just found it interesting that we use now what appears to be far more aggressive terminology.
It's just budgetary and extents of what you can do, who you can reach out for, what you can pull back to. So that's no big thing. And second point, we talked about the modern Tic Tacs.
Yeah.
Those have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
It's called a Foo Fighter.
Yeah, that's true. That shape has been around. Spheres and oblong things. Anybody else? Got another question? Got one here in the back.
Have you tried hypnosis back in '73 to see if
No, actually,
further?
I'm actually kind of afraid of that. I don't want to know if anything else happened. I have something I'm going to actually talk with Daryl about later on. That I don't want to do hypnosis because, again, if something occurred, I don't want to know. But I acknowledge that there's a very, very good chance that there's more to my story than even I know. But I don't know if I want to go there or not. Any others? Okay, thank you very much.
All right, let's give a big hand for J. Michael Long. Thanks so much. Make sure you check out his show, J. Michael Show.
It's on J. Michael Show on YouTube. Just look at